recognizing that people have other work to do at home besides what they're here with us doing. So it's really that simple. Build a great place to work, treat people like you want to be treated.
Welcome to the InitiativeOne Leadership Podcast, where we help leaders maximize their impact and transform their lives. I'm your host, Nick Nighbor, as well as the VP of Strategic Partnership for InitiativeOne. And in today's episode, we have Joe Shefchik with Paper Transport, located right in the Green Bay, De Pere area, actually. And so excited to have him on. So before we bring him on, I want to share just a little bit of background on Joe. So Joe is the Vice President of Business Development for Paper Transport, and he actually runs quite a few teams. He leads the sales team, the customer service team, the marketing team, and also is helping out with recruiting as well. PTI, or Paper Transport, is a trucking company that began in 1990, and they employ over 950 professional Class A CDL truck drivers, along with another 200 support staff helping them with logistics. What's even more impressive is since, for the last several years, they've been on a 15+% annual growth rate. So they're doing really big things, not just helping with labor, but then also providing value to the transportation industry. Paper Transport has won multiple sustainability awards, multiple Carrier of the Year awards from the largest consumer product producers in the country. Welcome to the show, Joe.
All right, thanks for having me.
Glad that you're here. This is exciting. When I was reading the professional Class A CDL truck drivers, it brought me back to my time in the military. So I was 88 Mike in the military, truck driver.
Okay.
And drove very large wheeled vehicles that could only go like 45 miles an hour because they hauled these huge tanks. So bringing me back to my time in the military. But today's show is about you. So transportation, you've been there for over 16 years. So tell us about your background getting into transportation.
Sure, I think it happened just like it happens to most people, totally by accident.
Okay.
Right? People just tend to land in transportation and either love it or hate it. Mm-hmm. Most people love it, because it's rather tactical, hands-on. Right? You're doing something every day and seeing things move. So I got there by accident. It's been a good ride, right? I mean, I started literally filing paperwork to where we are today.
Okay. And VP, so tell me a little bit about your role. Like, what are you all responsible for? Like, what does your normal day look like at Paper Transport?
Sure. So it's significantly less than what you shared there, but of course, in the time from filing paperwork, through today, I've touched on all of those areas. So today, accountable for the customer service, sales teams, account management. So really our customer relationships is what rolls up through my group. And it's about business development. And I think about that. And I think if I thought about myself as sales and just sales, like pound on the door and make something happen, like that's not exciting, right? And it's not exciting for most people. Mm-hmm. So the tack that I personally try to take, and I think it's been part of PTI's success in general, is just looking to solve problems for people. That's the task, right? Go solve problems for people internally and externally, and that's where the magic happens.
And when you work with people and you're just saying like, hey, how can we help you? How can we serve you? It sounds like those are win-win relationships that you're developing. It's not some kind of like vendor relationship. Like sounds like you're looking for like a win-win with these organizations that you're looking to engage with, or just, I guess, continue the relationships you already have.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, I'd take it one step further.
Okay.
And say that most people don't quite know how they need to be helped, right? Whether it's internally or externally, right?
Okay.
I think it's, for us, the approach is, I'm not sure I can help you, right? Mm-hmm. People that we can help usually look like this, list a couple of things. Okay. Does that sound like you, right? So that's the approach that we try to take.
That's really good. And you're right, because if you call someone or if I call someone that I want to help, like a lot of times they don't know. Like they've not asked the question.
That's right.
And then that's really your role, is let me ask you a question or two, even if it just makes sense to have a conversation.
Sure.
Right? Yep. So I really like that approach, because we've all, I think we've all experienced the other side.
Sure.
Where you're getting, pitched and trying to like be convinced, and it doesn't feel good.
Right.
Because we've all experienced it.
Right.
So that's really cool that you take that approach with the organizations that you work with. You guys have over 1,000 employees. 1,000, like that's a huge organization. So tell us about that. Like, you didn't start with 1,000.
Right.
So what has that journey been to where you are today?
Yeah. So interesting question. Try to sum up in a minute and a half, right?
Yeah.
When I joined Paper Transport, we were somewhere around 200 employees, probably 25 office employees or so.
Okay.
So significantly different organization, to where we stand today. And I think that, at the core of it has been, our motto is what drives you. Right?
Yes.
So at the core of it has been that, and that's what's led to our growth, I think, right? Asking both internally and externally what drives you, and then how can we help you get there? So a good long while back, we determined that drivers, will drive our growth, right? And so ensuring that we're taking care of those people, right? So it's what drives you, and our mission is to build a great place to work. And so that's what the story's about. How do we enable a great place to work? So that's what's enabled, a lot of that growth. Throughout that process, as you take those step level changes in size, and I think it's certainly demanded some rethinking, on process and leadership. What does it take to run an organization of that size? So there's been a number of iterations that way, and I think at its core, and it's always about what drives you. Asking each individual, and frankly, from the customer approach, I take that approach with the people. What does Brett want, right? What does Bob want? What does Sue want? Mm-hmm. And, it's ultimately to do a better job, right? Please their boss. So what does their boss expect of them? Right. So that's the approach that we're taking. Like, what drives you? For me, it's on the customer side, on the drivers, critically important, and then ultimately trying to build a great place to work for folks.
Did you know we help leaders and organizations build trust, reduce drama, and create healthy work cultures? Each month, we host a leadership event called the Think Tank, and this is where we discuss leadership challenges and topics in the workplace. Join us in person or online. Go to InitiativeOne.com to register. I really like that tagline, and I have that written down in my notes. I was actually going to say, tell us about that, but you've already told us about that. So the tagline is what drives you, and you can use that. I mean, you can use that to go to market, but then you also use it internally with your team, because a lot of times that's not the question. Hey, this is our goal.
Right.
And like, great, another growth goal, as opposed to, where do you want to be in 2 to 5 years? Like, what's driving you to come to work every day? Whether that's remote or in person, or even that driver. I mean, that is like, I feel that being a truck driver is like one of the hardest jobs that there is. And some people just think like, oh, you're just sitting there and just holding the steering wheel. Like, no, like 10 years, we'll say 20 years ago, people didn't have cell phones. So when someone's on the road and they're got a 53-foot trailer, everyone around him, he knows or she knows that they're probably on their phone.
Sure.
Which makes it like 10 times harder to like control that rig, because they're probably not paying attention. So you started when there was only 200. When I say only 200, 200 is still a big number, right. But now 1,000. So that's, out of necessity, there's been multiple iterations. Like, all right, like we need to restructure. Like, how do we break these into different departments so everyone's being served properly? You had talked a little bit about family culture. So, and it sounds like that's like an intentional thing. Was that the case when you started? Is that something that you just talk about every day? Like, tell us about this culture that that your company speaks on.
Sure. So I think it is the way it was when I started. I think we've done a great job of keeping that together, over time. I think that when we do it right, and it's not every day that we do it right, but when we do it right, people feel that and know that. And, we get that from our employees all the time. I'm treated much differently here. And I think that, at the core of it, we try to keep it simple, because I'm just not a bright guy, right? Keep it simple. Yep. And it's to build a great place to work, right? Treat people like you want to be treated. And it really is that straightforward, right? And recognizing that people have other work to do at home, besides what they're here with us doing. So it's really that simple. Build a great place to work, treat people like you want to be treated.
Build a great place to work and treat people like they want to be treated. That does sound really simple.
Super simple.
Maybe that's what some of these other organizations need to do. Just make it more simple, right? Not have like this full page document of how we should show up. Just, hey, how do you want to be treated? That's probably how you should talk to your to your coworker that didn't quite get back to you on that email. Right. They might have life happening. Actually, I guarantee you, they have life happening. They got other stuff going on. So we talked a little bit about what drives you. We talked about the family culture, the family-like culture that you have. You guys just went through, is it like an addition or like an expansion just recently here, right?
Sure. So throughout COVID, while folks were not in the office, we continued to grow. We outgrew our space in De Pere on 41 there. And, as we came back to the office, we needed some more space. So we moved a team. It's our logistics team or freight brokerage team is downtown Green Bay now. Okay. So we've got approximately 50 office spots there, and actually with plans to add on to that space. So growth continues to be the vision.
That's always a good sign for a company looking for more space to rent or space to buy. I did want to touch on this here, COVID and the transportation industry. How did you as an organization, how did you all navigate during that time?
So like everyone, it was challenging, right?
Yes.
But I think in transportation, there were some particular challenges. The peak in the valley, was a real challenge, right? So first couple of weeks in transportation, many folks valleyed, right? Okay. Where there was no demand for product, many folks went home, probably shut a lot of rail yards down or shipyards down. For us at that time, it was all peak all the time, right? 'Cause paper transport, we haul an awful lot of paper towel and tissues and toilet paper and the goods people were buying. So it was all peak all the time for us.
Like you're like redlining all the time. Is that what you're saying?
That's right.
Okay, that's not sustainable.
Right. So really high demand all of the time, and that was really what drove the supply chain issues, that we saw throughout the country was this red line all of the time. So how do we navigate it? I mean, I think just a lot of communication, right? A lot of communication with the drivers about what was expected of them and what was okay for them to raise their hand and say they had a problem, right? And they just shut it down. And I think we maintain always, and then through that period, the fact that the driver is the captain of the ship, right? That driver determines, when we roll and when we don't. Right. So that was part of it, but that was always part of it for us. And I just think a lot of communication around what was expected and what was okay to say no to, and at the same to our customers, right? What could they expect from us, and what were we going to be open and tell them that we couldn't do?
So as that demand really never went away, what was demanded more of was more drivers on the road more. Right. Even though, I mean, I don't know if anyone knows this for truck drivers, but you can only be on the road for so many hours a day. You can't just like, hey, you can be on the road for 20 hours. Like, no, like you have to follow the guidelines to be safe, but then also the logistics, everyone's that support. I could just imagine like you could almost go without leaving the office because there's that much more work to do. Right. So were there a lot of changes that you guys made structurally for that communication piece? Like things that you, like any collaboration or innovation from that to where you are today? Did that happen much, or was it just more of like, hey, like we just need to talk more?
I think it was just we need to connect more, right? Okay. I mean, it was purposeful connectivity, especially as everyone went home, right? I think, and that's probably most organizations, right?
Mm-hmm.
You left the office, you went home, and created some purposeful connectivity.
Right.
So I'd say that's what we did there.
Are you guys still redlining?
No, I mean, I'd say the industry, first of all, we're doing well. The nature of our business is very contractually oriented, so we don't see as high of peaks as other people see, and we don't see as low of valleys as other trucking companies see. But the industry on the whole, right, it's the supply chain smoothing out, so there isn't the crazy demand.
Mm-hmm.
Things are flowing a little bit more naturally.
Well, that's good news.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because otherwise you might be in a different role.
Right. A little bit of sanity for everyone.
Like you can't, I get it. I mean, in almost in any industry, like there's usually like a push, like, all right, like we need to lean into this. And you were probably 2 or 3 months in, like, is this going to end?
Yeah.
Just like all your other employees, like, is this going to end? Like, and so now it's not back to normal. It's probably like the new normal,
Right.
But it's not red line
Right.
24/7, which is a blessing. So I'm going to put you on the spot here. Your definition of leadership.
What I'll share, right, and I don't know if it's the right one, but I think, where paper transport's been successful, and where I hope that I've personally been successful, is to set ambitious goals and share some vision of how we're going to get there, right? So I'd say that, if I need to define it in a sentence, but I think I would pile onto that is the constant evaluation of, is this right? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's okay to change the destination, right? So I'd say paper transport success has been about setting ambitious goals with some vision of how we're going to get there.
Okay. I really like that. It's almost in line with like the simple thing, like treat people like how you should be treated, right? It's very simple and straightforward. If you don't have a vision, then where are we going? But there has to be some kind of target that you're shooting for, because just the cost of just the cost of doing business today versus 5 years ago. Like you have to grow. If you're not growing, then that business is going to go somewhere else. So thank you for sharing that. What, as an organization for paper transport, like what have you personally done, or maybe even people on your team have done to develop yourself as, because you have a team of people that you lead. What have you done to become more of an effective leader for your team?
Sure. So the organization engages in a fair amount of leadership training, so there's some formal leadership training that we're injecting into the organization. We think that's important. Personally, do a fair amount of reading.
Okay.
I belong to a collaboration group, where we're getting together with peers on a regular basis for a number of years now. I'd say certainly at our leadership level, that's really well supported and almost an expectation.
Yes.
That you're collaborating with peers across different industries to go out and learn more about what they're doing in the leadership space, what they're doing in the business space. So I'd say that, right? Some formal training, some reading, and along with that, collaboration.
Cool. Would you consider yourself a reader? Like, are you a reader? You like to read?
That's a strong word, but yeah, I'd say I read a fair amount, yeah.
Okay. What are you reading right now?
Can't remember the name of the book. Adam Grant's latest book.
Adam Grant's latest book. Okay.
I forget. Think Again.
There we go. Think Again by Adam Grant. Yeah, he's got some great. I follow him on LinkedIn, and there's usually always something that gets me thinking.
Sure.
Like as he's talking about, it could be just effectiveness at work or just time management. And I think I saw something about a 4-day work week lately, and he's got some good stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
So cool. All right. Any closing comments that you'd like to share with our audience, just about paper transport or yourself, or anything else for the audience?
Well, now you've put me on the spot.
Now I have. Yes.
I don't think I have anything revolutionary. I think if it's anything, keep it simple, right? Be straightforward. It's
Okay.
that simple.
I like it. Just keep it simple. It makes life easier. Then there's just less noise. Not that the notifications are going to stop on our phone,
Right.
but they're going to keep coming. But if we can keep a simple life, then we can focus on the important things.
Right on.
Correct.
Right on.
Cool. So if somebody wanted to reach out to you, what's the best social media platform for someone to for them to connect with you?
Probably LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So those of you listening here, go to the show notes. You'll see Joe's information. So if you want to connect with him on LinkedIn, feel free to do that. So again, welcome. Thank you for spending some time with us here today on the podcast. So Joe Shefchik, business development with paper transport in Green Bay, right? It's Green Bay.
De Pere technically,
You're
right?
still-
But we're
you're
here
still-
in Green Bay.
So you have both locations?
That's right.
All right. So in both Green Bay and De Pere. So thank you so much for being part of the show. We really, really appreciate that. So, and if you're just checking this out here, whether it's on YouTube or whether you're listening to the show, wanted to let you know real quick about an event that we got coming up next month. Each month we put on a leadership event called our Think Tank. And what we do is we typically cover a topic that covers different challenges, different issues that people are having in the workplace, whether it's leaders of organizations or leading teams of people. Go to initiativeone.com/events to register for the next event. And thank you so much for plugging in here today. If you loved this show, leave us a rating, leave us a review. Your rating and your review will help us reach more people. If you found some great information here and you resonated with Joe, go ahead and share this episode with someone, because you never know. Maybe that person that's not keeping it simple, they need to. So if you know someone that needs to keep it simple, send this to them, shoot a text to them, and let them know. Thank you so much for plugging in. And again, remember, leadership isn't what you do, it's who you are. Thanks for listening.